everybody. It's Richard Ramos, and welcome to the Parent Whisperer podcast. Today, I have a really special message that I want to share with you. So I hope you have some time to really sit down and really listen to what I have to say about the day of disclosure. That's what I want to talk to you about, and the implications that it's going to have really on the whole world. But as you know, I'm primarily always concerned about mom and dad, parents and children, family. But I got to tell you that this is probably the most important message that I've given on my podcast since I started having a podcast last year. Now, I don't want to be cynical and I don't mean to be an alarmist, but I do want to be realistic about this whole UFO phenomenon. Why is the government now all of a sudden admitting that UFOs, or now they call them UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomenon, but everybody knows them as unidentified flying objects. We've been hearing about this all our life, basically, and the government has always denied it. They've debunked it. They've made people who talk about it seem like a fool and a conspiracy theorist. Since 1947, when the Roswell crash happened, and I believe he was a Army officer or a Air Force officer, Marcel, I forget his first name. This spacecraft crashed on his land. He went out, he saw the craft. There was a dead alien, he reported, and then he took a piece of the craft, and it was a piece of looked like metal, but you could bend it, you could hammer it, you could do it was you couldn't damage it. It was unlike anything he had ever known or seen, or that anybody had ever seen. But then the military came out, they made him lie about it. They made him take pictures with a weather balloon, and they covered it up and said, oh, it was all a weather balloon, which was a stupid and nobody believed explanation, because the original story had already been printed in the paper, but then they came back and they tried to, debunk it. So since 1947, and before 1947, in the 1800s and 1900s, there have been thousands of sightings, but it's always been debunked. We were told it's all been nonsense. So why now? That's what I want to talk about. Why is the government now, the Pentagon, the military, and these are credible people. These are not just some farmer or some, person out there, which the normal, we'll call normal people. Those were the people that have claimed they were abducted. They claimed they saw UFOs. And so there's a lot of that going on. What is the truth? What is really happening? That's what I want to share with you to the best of my understanding. Now, I have been studying this stuff since the 1990s. And when I first talked about it in my church, I know people thought I was crazy. They were looking at me like, oh, what are you talking about, Richard? But now, oh, now it's real. All this time, people were made to feel like, oh, I don't want to say anything because people are going to make fun of me or think I'm crazy. Oh, but now we got, you know, government officials, generals, military people going before Congress, political people, politicians going before Congress and admitting that it's all real. Okay, so what's happening? So I want to start with a story to put this kind of in context about a man who wanted to remain anonymous. He received a phone call from Washington, D.C., letting him know that he had been selected to serve on a commission, a special study group that was said to be of the highest importance. Now, he knew some of the people that were invited to be on that same commission, and so he figured, well, I better go ahead and cooperate with this. And the objective of the commission was to determine accurately and realistically The nature of the problems that would confront the United States if and when a condition of permanent world peace would arrive. What would happen? They wanted them to study. What would be the implication? What would be the ramification if we had a world of peace, a world without war? And then they wanted them to draft a program and some conclusions dealing with the issue if there was no more war. So he realized the meeting was really, of a big importance, and he felt like he had no really no choice but to be a part of this commission. So this meeting was taking place in a large underground facility, and this group met for 2.5 years, and they produced a report. But this man who wanted to remain anonymous, he agonized when they were done with the report because they said we cannot publish this, we cannot show this to the public, and everybody, swore that they would not talk about it, just give it to the politicians and let them read it and make up their mind what they wanted to do with the suggestions that they made. But this guy couldn't. His conscience just wouldn't let him, do that because he knew that what they had come up with and the things that they talked about and that are in the report. Matter of fact, I think I have it right here. Uh, he said, no, I can't do that. So he called a friend of his that was a reporter, and he told him, listen, I want you to read this report, and I want you to consider publishing it so that the public could know what was going on. But he said to his friend, but if you read this report and you decide, no, this is too much, I'm not going to report this, then he made him swear to secrecy that he would not tell anybody about it, that he would also take a vow, of silence, so to speak. So after he read the report, he understood why it was suppressed because he knew that if the public read it, and I've read it, uh, if it got out, he knew that it would be so offensive and it's so outrageous. So I'm going to share with you some of it. I'm not going to share everything, obviously, because there's a lot in it. Um, but here's just some of the things that they concluded. Now, remember, the question was, what would happen with the United States uh, if the world uh, was at peace? Here were some of their conclusions. Number one, war is necessary to control society. That was basically the main point that they came up with. We got to have war because we have to control society. Until other ways are developed to control society, war must not only be maintained, but improved in effectiveness. Because the globalist elite, another thing, because of the globalist elite depopulation agenda, which is what COVID was all about, but that's a different subject. Here's what they concluded. Medical advances are viewed more as problems than as progress. Why? Because the globalists want to shrink or depopulate. They feel there's too many people in the world. They call them useless eaters. That's what they call us. And so, because of that, medical advances, they look down on that. Third, poverty is necessary and desirable to control society. Another one, standing armies are social welfare institutions in the same sense as old people homes and hospitals. What does that mean? That means that the reason they maintain a military army is because it serves to keep a certain group of people, which are usually not the elite, wealthy kids of wealthy parents, but of the lower income people like the Vietnam War, keep them, controlled and trained and ready to kill people and go to war. Another conclusion, the space program, NASA, and missile defense programs, the principal goal is about spending large sums of money, not the advancement of science or national defense, which is what we are told publicly to justify all the money that they're spending on these programs. And the purpose of spending all that money is to bring down the United States and the economy and to bring it into a new world order, which I'm sure by this point you've heard about that. Another conclusion, organized repression of minority groups is needed. So can you see why this report was suppressed? But this one gentleman felt like, no, I can't do that. The public needs to know what we are recommending to our policymakers. And one more, uh, the deliberate pollution of air and water. Why is all of this is because they want to control us, control society. And war is the one of the main ways they do that. Last one I'll mention, and these are not all of them, but these are the main ones that I felt you could make sense of when you look at the world today and in our lifetime. Long range planning and budgeting of the optimum number of lives to be destroyed annually in overt warfare is high on the group's list of priorities for government action. So here's the conclusion of the reporter who read the report, and that he did publish it, obviously. You can find it online, but I'll say more about that in a second. Quote, in human terms, it is an outrageous document. It explains aspects of American policy otherwise incomprehensible by the ordinary standards of common sense. What we may think of these explanations is something else, but it seems to me that we are entitled to know not only what they are, but whose they are, these conclusions, these policies. By whose, I don't mean merely the names of the authors of the report. Much more important, we have a right to know to what extent their assumptions of social necessity are shared by the decision makers in our government. Which do they accept, these recommendations, and which do they reject? However, disturbing the answers, only a full and frank discussion offers any conceivable hope of solving the problems raised by the special study group in their report from Iron Mountain. That's the name of the report. Now, let me just say this. If you look this up on the internet, the report from Iron Mountain, there's all these comments have been made about it, that it's a hoax, that it's fiction, that it's not real, it's a conspiracy theory. Quote, report from Iron Mountain is a skillful hoax. Quote, unquote, quote, the book is variously described as a harmless subterfuge, a hair-raising analysis, the sinister work of a sick mind and a serious fraud. And the Guinness World Book of Records said it was the most successful literary hoax. So with all that denial, that just reinforces and tells me that it's true. Okay, so you can make up your own mind. You can, like I said, you can go online and you can download it and read it for yourself. But for me, I, we know the government, that's all they do is lie. Like I already said, now we're dealing with, oh, UFOs, that's foolishness. It's all, just stupid. But now it's all true. So let's look at some of these recommendations in a little more depth. War is necessary to control society. Well, since World War II, we have been in a state of war which continues to this day as I'm speaking to you in May of 2026. Now we're at war with Iran. And now Trump is talking about going into Cuba. And he already went into Venezuela and captured the president. Why is all that happening? But what I'm telling you, based on this report, these wars are planned. They're manufactured. Now, what proof of that do we have of that? Not only beyond this report. Well, what did we learn from the Pentagon Papers? Or you maybe some of you are too young to remember that, or some of you may not know of that, and some of you probably do know what that was about. But the Pentagon Papers were found by um, Daniel Ellsberg. He discovered these papers in the Pentagon, which he was working, and when he read them, he realized that we had started the war in Vietnam, that it was all a lie. We were told that in the Gulf of Tonkin, there in Vietnam, that we were attacked by the Vietnamese, and therefore that's why we went to war. But those Pentagon papers showed that no, that we made that up. We created that war. And I know that's hard to hear because we lost a lot of lives. I mean, that's what war is about. We lose millions of people. And I know that's really hard to hear for people that have given their life, have dedicated their service to the military and to the protection of the country, etc. So I apologize for this if it's offending you, and I'm sure it probably does. But again, um, we have to be honest and hold our government accountable. Then what about the lies that we were told about the weapons of mass destruction, which was the justification in 2003 by the Bush administration to go to war? Well, what happened? They never found them. Never found any weapons of mass destruction. And then, of course, there's 9/11. Now, I don't know how you feel about 9/11. I never believed the report, the commission. That 9/11 commission was just like the Warren Commission that gave the uh, the study or the investigation on the Kennedy assassination, which was all a bunch of baloney, which we now know, um, based on again the Epstein files and other things that are coming out. We know that that commission it was all a bunch of lies and denials and hiding evidence. Now, same with 9/11. Now, I'll just give you one example here. There's a organization called the 9/11 pilots. They're all airplane pilots, over 1,000 worldwide. And I just want to quote something on their website about the 9/11 incident with the planes crashing into. This incident is the one that crashed, supposedly, allegedly crashed in the Pentagon. Quote, I am Captain Dan Hanley, an American citizen who has resided in Islamabad, Pakistan for over 12 years. I currently serve as the director and international public spokesperson of a global grassroots effort called 9/11 Pilot Whistleblowers, whose purpose is to show that there were no Muslim hijackers at the controls of the 9/11 aircraft, but that they were electronically hijacked through employment of a system called the uninterruptible autopilot that enables a remote source to take control of the aircraft autopilot and flight management computer and guide it to its target destination. Once engaged, the pilots cannot disconnect the system. An example of this is given by the purported profile flown by alleged Muslim hijacker Hani Hanjour, who supposedly piloted American airline Flight 77 that allegedly struck the Pentagon on 9/11. The aircraft was reported to have conducted a descending, listen, an accelerating 330-degree corkscrew turn from 7,000 feet west of the Pentagon to arrive precisely at ground level without striking the surface to hit the Office of Naval Intelligence at nearly 500 miles per hour with military precision on his first attempt. But here's the key. This maneuver was replicated in a flight simulator. Highly experienced pilots could not. Now, this guy had a little bit of training in a small airplane, if you know the story of the hijackers. He had just some hours of training, probably several days of hours of training. And yet he performed a maneuver that these experienced pilots, I'll read it again, highly experienced pilots could not perform this maneuver on successive attempts without crashing. And yet, according to the official narrative, Hani Hanjour accomplished this amazing aerial feat on the first attempt with minimal aircraft experience, training in light aircraft having only a few hundred hours of total flight time. Now, what am I talking about? I'm talking about what the government is telling us now. But what I want to lay a foundation and a case for is that why should we believe anything they say now, based on all the lies that we've been told, and based on this report that is telling us that war is planned for the reasons I already said. And if you look at since 1950 all the way to 2026, we've been in the Korean War, the Vietnam War, Grenada, Lebanon, Panama, Gulf War, Somalia, Bosnia, Kosovo, Afghanistan from 2001 to 2021, and now we're in war with Iran. Now, let me get to some of the considerations for the substitutes of war that this report talks about. That, well, if war is not going to work, what other ways can we control society? So, in order to control the masses, they suggested three basic crisis scenarios to control society, all of them based on fear. Number one, an environmental crisis, what we know today as climate change. And who's the one that told us that climate change was the existential, sorry, I didn't say that right, threat, the greatest existential, sorry, I'm not saying that right, threat to the United States, not China, not Russia, climate change. Where did that come from? So that's the first suggestion of how you can control society out of fear. Second, a pandemic crisis. Hmm, is that what COVID was all about? A pandemic crisis to control us. And what happened? Basically, shut the whole world down. Shut schools down, shut businesses down, made us stay at home, 6 foot distance, mask. You can't go to the store. You can't go here. You can't go there. If you don't have the vaccination, all of that, they totally controlled. And that was simply an experiment to see what would happen if they tried to control us that way. The third suggestion they made, and this is the one I want to get into, is a threat of an alien invasion. And so in 2017, again, remember, since 1947 up until December of 2017, this was all bunk. In 2017, the New York Times released an article featuring a video that was released, sneaked by, let me get it right, the name of the organization, leaked by the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, ATIP, that was investigating the reality of UFOs since 2007. And then this video of one of the videos. Now they released all kinds. Now the Pentagon recently released all kinds of videos you could watch. But and then after they did that, in 2020, the Pentagon, the government, the military admitted that UFOs are real. So why now? Now let me be clear in what I'm saying. These three um, considerations for the substitute of war. Now, remember, what would happen if we were at peace? They concluded can't do that. We cannot have that because that'll affect the culture, it'll affect the economy, it'll have way too we won't be able to control the masses, we won't be able to control the marginalized people. So, but if we can't have do it through war, what other ways can we do it? Environmental crisis, a pandemic crisis, a threat of an alien invasion. And that's exactly where we are at. All three of those things have been implemented in recent years. Now, there's one other aspect about this report that I haven't mentioned about the report from Iron Mountain. And it's the other reason why I believe this report is real. And that's because it was published in 1967. What does that tell you? Since 1967, they're telling our policymakers, gotta have war. I read since 1950 all the way to 220, we've been at war. And if we can't do it through war, then environmental crisis, pandemic crisis, threat of an alien invasion, and all of those recommendations were given to the government in 1967. And yet, here you and I are in 2026. And since 2020, well, the environmental climate change, that's been happening for a while now. But the pandemic crisis and the threat of an alien invasion, we are right there, right now. And that's the reason why I believe the report is true. Now, if you don't believe it's true, you don't have to believe me. I'm not asking you to believe me. I'm just reporting what I've researched for many years and the implication of what this is going to mean. Um, and the alien threat and what would that mean? Now, before I talk about that, I want to give you a couple of references here. You can go on YouTube and you can rent, or you can go on YouTube and watch a couple of videos. One's called Disclosure and the other one's called The Phenomenon. And those are really good documentaries. But on Prime, you can rent a movie for $10 and it's called The Day of Disclosure. I think it's called, or no, The Age of Disclosure. And it's an excellent documentary on credible people, politicians. Marco Rubio's on there, who is now the Secretary of State. At the time, he was a senator. There's other senators, other congresspeople, military people, all testifying to the reality of UFOs. Uh, so if you want to see more of that, you can, and I would highly recommend that you rent the movie The Age of Disclosure. Now, but the other thing about this, the more important question is not only the reality of UFOs, but are there aliens? And according to these credible military, government, political leaders, and global leaders, they say yes, there are aliens amongst us. There are aliens in other galaxies that are visiting and have been visiting the Earth for, in some cases, they're saying, centuries, in some decades. There are in the ocean. They've seen UFOs that have come out of the ocean and gone into the ocean. And of the aliens, basically, these congressional members have admitted that they've seen them. They've talked with them. They're meeting with them. In some case, not everybody, but certain people. And basically, they classify them in three different ways. Grays, which are the little gray ones that you see in the movies with the kind of the big head, the big eyes, and they're very short. Then the humanoids, which are basically human-looking ones that shapeshift, so to speak, and then the reptilians. And there's so much about these reptilians and the control that they have over our government, supposedly. Again, this is what's reported. You don't have to believe it, but this is what they're talking about if you go watch that movie. And there's a doctor by the name of Stephen Greer, and he leads a group called the Disclosure Project Intelligence Archive. Now, he has a little different version on this. Now, he recently had a press conference in DC just a couple of weeks ago. And what he does, he leads groups of people out in the desert. I think it's in Arizona, it might be New Mexico, where he claims that he teaches these people in these groups to telepathically connect with aliens. I don't know. This is where we're at. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know. I've seen him on film and I've listened to him, and he sounds like a really sincere, very intelligent guy. And he's an expert for sure. He's been at this a long time. And he says he's reported all this to the president, he's reported all this to Congress, and he's just waiting for them to come out and make an official statement, which they haven't done. But a lot of these guys think it's imminent. And I'll get to that in a second. But he says, Dr. Stephen Greer, you can find him at drstephengreer.com. He says that many UFO sightings and abductions are staged events, that many of the UFOs that people have seen, those are man-made by government contractors like Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, and Douglas Aircraft. That, in other words, because of the connection and collaboration with, again, aliens, they've been able to reverse engineer this anti-gravity technology that they bring to the earth, so to speak. Again, I'm trying to put this in very simple terms, but that's why I'm encouraging you do your own research, or at least watch the movie that I'm talking about, or the videos. They're all over the place on YouTube. You could easily find them. Uh, so he also says that the humanoid clones are biologically created here, um, in underground facilities. He says, now this is the part that's we have to pay attention to. He says that aliens are not hostile, but he also says it's wrong and even dangerous to consider aliens as demonic. And he mocks and puts down Christians who say, well, this is all just demonic. This is all just satanic. That's who they are. Again, there's a lot to this. And I'm just trying to give it to you because it's something that's going to have major implications and ramifications on us if they're going to come out and admit this. Right now, it's all this is what these guys are saying, and I'm reporting it to you because one way or the other, this thing's going to come down. He says that these are friendly aliens and that they will lead us through their advanced technology to a better and peaceful world. And he agrees, of course, that there are UFOs that are not made by humans, but by alien uh, technology. And he also says that there's an internal war in the government right now. There's something called the legacy program, and they're the ones that are preventing this official statement. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I don't want to get into all that. Why would they prevent this revelation, this official statement? And it has to do with business and money and a lot of different things. Then you have the whistleblowers that I've been reporting to you, the things that they've said, and they want the truth to come out. Even they said President Trump wants the truth to come out. But see, he's not really in control. And the truth is, and you'll see this in the movie if you watch it, in The Age of Disclosure, where Marco Rubio and others say, the president does not have access to all the secret documents and information that is about this issue and other issues too. But he just can't. He doesn't have it. They refuse to give it to him. Imagine that. Again, a different subject. And one more thing, you may have heard, or I don't know that you've heard this, about the recent disappearance from family, disappearance from work, disappearance from the earth, just gone. Nine of the top UFO extraterrestrial scientists. These are the top scientists that know all about this stuff. Gone. It's been reported in the news that they can't, nobody knows what happened to them. And Dr. Stephen Greer talks about that. And the last thing I want to mention is the new movie that's coming out next month by Steven Spielberg, Disclosure Day. And I'm just really interested to see what that movie is going to say to us as another form of programming us, just like they did with COVID, the programming us and, the pandemic, the climate change, now this threat, just moving us to a place of fear. So I'm just interested when this movie comes out. I'm sure all of you will hear about it and all of you will watch it. But here's the bottom line. Let me come to the end. I'm saying all that I've said so far to just try to lay a foundation that this is as crazy as it sounds, and you might dismiss me, and you may just think, oh, Richard, you've gone off, your rocker, but that's what they've been telling us. And what I'm saying to you, they're admitting it now. So where's it going? What is it going to mean? Well, if the government is going to come out and make a statement, could be President Trump. I don't know that it would be it could be another world leader and say officially, we are in contact with aliens. That will have global implications on government, on the military, on the economics globally, on culture, science. It'll have a huge psychological effect. And maybe more important, it will have an effect on our faith, on religion, on spirituality. Who is God then? And what does it mean to be human? What does it mean that I'm made in the image of God if there are these other aliens that we cannot do anything about? I mean, these aerial phenomenons, these UFOs, they have flown over our nuclear sites, and there was nothing the military could do about it. And they shut down where the nuclear bombs are, the sites, and all the controls that if we needed to launch those, they shut them down. And there was nothing they could do about it. And then they turned them back on. You'll see it all in that movie. And when they watch these things just floating there, then they called jets to go after them. And as soon as they did that, they just took off and disappeared in a flash. So, what does it mean to be human? Because this is the whole thing about AI, where artificial intelligence is going, is the transhumanist movement. That's what it's about. They want to connect AI with the human brain and enhance what it means to be human. And the question then will be, what does it mean to be a human being anymore? If you are enhanced or not enhanced, and only a certain class of people will be enhanced or can afford to be enhanced, to have more intelligence, to live longer, and all these different kinds of things. But one of my main concerns here is that what does it mean to have faith in God? And for those of us who are believers, this is going to cause a lot of theological debates. One of the pastors that came out on a show that by the name a guy his name is David Icke, And he's been talking about this stuff, and I've read his books. He's been talking about this since the 90s and been ridiculed for it. And now he's being uh, affirmed and justified in everything that he's been talking about. But recently, he had a pastor, he showed a video of a pastor who said that the certain government officials brought together all these pastors and they told them that they needed to start preparing their congregation for this revelation, this announcement of the reality of alien beings in interaction with us and our government here in the United States and probably globally. What is that going to mean? Who will become the experts now that we and our children listen to and follow? Who are our children going to believe now? Who are we going to follow now? Let me read to you, as far as theologically, this is from an article from the Vatican and the stance of the Catholic Church on this issue. Monsignor Corrado Balducci, a theologian member of the Vatican Curia, the governing body, and an insider close to the Pope, has gone on Italian national television 5 times, including recent months, to proclaim that extraterrestrial contact is a real phenomenon. Balducci provided an analysis of extraterrestrials that he feels is consistent with the Catholic Church's understanding of theology. Monsignor Balducci emphasizes that extraterrestrial encounters are not demonic. They are not due to psychological impairment. They are not a case of entity attachment, but these encounters deserve to be studied carefully. Since Monsignor Balducci is a demonology expert and consultant to the Vatican, and since the Catholic Church has historically demonized many new phenomenon that were poorly understood, he's stating that the Church does not censor these encounters and is all the more remarkable. And then at the end it says, Vatican expert Father Malachi Martin suggests that the Vatican is concerned that it will have a major doctrinal updating situation on its hands when extraterrestrial contact becomes authoritatively announced by world governments over the next several years. Now, this was produced in the late 1990s, this article, and now here we are. It's happening right now in 2026. So, um, my concern is this propaganda. Stay with me. Propaganda. That whatever the government tells us, it will be for their benefit. I can promise you that it'll be for more control, psychological fear, deception, or what's known as a psyop or psy-war, psychological operation on our minds, psychological war. This is something that the Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA, is known for. If you know about MK Ultra and the Monarch Project, again, that's a whole nother subject, but some of you may know what that's about. But what this is really about is movement, a reset of the globe, the New World Order, and one world government. Because imagine if the world felt, governments felt that we were under a threat of an alien invasion. And then that just reorganizes, like I said, government, culture, psychology, science, education, money, everything. And most of all, what do we believe in? How should we, where should our faith be? So for me and Parents on a Mission, um, you have to decide whatever they're going to tell us, mom and dad, it's up to you what you're going to believe. But I believe this is it's just all propaganda. Whether it's, I have no doubt that there are these UFOs. I don't doubt that, and especially the ones that are man-made by the government contractors. I don't have a hard time with that. But as far as these alien beings, I don't know, man. I don't know what to think about that, except for what I know the Bible says and my faith in God. And here's a quote I want to read to you by um, General Michael Flynn. Now, you may not know who he is, but he was the original national security advisor that Trump appointed in his first administration. But the FBI took him down. They pulled a fast one on him, and they made him really look bad. And so he's been out of government. But here's what he said. You might ask why I spent so much time discussing a British Army formation as warfare is transforming, because he's talking about how the world and war is changing. As warfare is transforming, the world is transforming. The blending of this transformation has become far more difficult to discern and even more challenging to understand. If sophisticated armies are recreating themselves for a new type of warfare, regular citizens, that's me and you, mom and dad, need to do the same. In other words, we need to pay attention to the transformation, the reset, the new world order. That is what's happening. That's what the war in Iran is all about. A different subject. Every citizen now has a responsibility to understand the information and intelligent environments we live in. A battlefield is not only a physical game most of the time, it is a mental game and one in which every single citizen must now prepare. All of us now, tuning into these tectonic and recent shifts, listen, in the global landscape are starting to realize that much of what we knew to be true is not. So, one more thing I want to read to you uh, from Scripture, because I would be remiss if I did not at least give you this. Now, I don't know what your faith is, and I'm not trying to shove my faith down your throat, but this issue is so important. That's why I'm taking all this time. This is probably the longest podcast I've ever done, but I can't rush through this stuff. And by now, I don't know who's still watching or who's still listening, but um, I want to leave you with hope, okay? And um, because my research has shown me that this is all very logical, it's very scientific, it's very sensible, and it's easy to believe. And many, if not most, are going to buy it. And that concerns me. This aliens and who are they? And the control and the power that they have, we cannot do, our military cannot do anything about it. And though one guy says, oh, they're friendly, you don't have to worry about them. They're going to bring peace to the world. Other people are saying we don't know that. They might be a threat. So the biblical account contradicts all this. And let me read to you. This is from Second Thessalonians in the New Testament, chapter 2, verse 9. The coming of the lawless one is by the activity of Satan, with all power and false signs and wonders, and with all wicked deception for those who are perishing because they refuse to love the truth and be saved. Therefore, God sends them a strong delusion. Is that what this is? So that they may believe what is false, in order that all may be condemned who did not believe the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness. In other words, I don't want to hear none of that, uh, because I'd rather just keep on living the life I'm living. So remember that the report from Iron Mountain, which I started with, which is hard not to believe, since what was recommended is playing out in 1967 is playing out right before our eyes. Tells us that all of this was planned a long time ago as a means of control. So, parents on a mission, mom and dad, parents out there, I hope you stayed with me to the end. Let me say this to you. Hang on to your kids. And more than ever, keep faith in God. Use your discernment. Listen to your intuition. Keep a pure heart, and you will know the truth that sets you free. Thanks for listening. I hope this was helpful to you. And if it was, I pray that you will share this message because this is going to happen. It's going to come down. Thanks a lot. You've been listening to the Parent Whisperer podcast. I'm Richard Ramos. Leave your review, ask your questions, um, uh, share this if you believe it will be helpful to people. I know it's a little long, but I know the content can really help people rethink maybe some of the priorities of their life. And remember always, Parents on a Mission is not for bad parents. It's for good parents like you who just want to get better. Thanks for listening.